Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the story behind one of the most recognizable luxury brands on the planet, Mercedes Benz. We all know it today as an $80 billion global titan, right? But the history of how it actually got there, it is absolutely wild. It's packed with near bankruptcies, intense rivalries, and a hidden history you've probably never heard. We're going to look at the raw data, the major historical turning points, and the one person who literally kept the whole dream alive. So think about it. Who really saved the world's first car company? When you picture Mercedes Benz, your mind probably jumps straight to those famous engineers, Karl Benz or Gottlieb Daimler. But here's the twist. The answer to this central mystery isn't the guy whose name is on the hood ornament. The real savior, it's someone who flat out refused to let a brilliant piece of engineering just sit and collect dust in a workshop. To see how this all unfolded, we've got to travel back to the early morning hours of the summer of 1888. Picture this. A woman sneaks out of her house while her husband is fast asleep. She grabs her two teenage sons, and together they literally push her husband's prized, completely untested invention down the street just so the engine noise wouldn't wake him up. Then, she sets off on a 66-mile unauthorized joyride to Pforzheim. You have to understand, at this time, no motorized carriage had ever survived a journey like this. It was a massive, massive gamble.
But hey, before we see how that crazy road trip ends, let's pause and flash back to 1871. We really need to understand exactly why she did this, because it perfectly captures the dynamic between our two main characters. On one hand, you have Karl Benz. He was a brilliant but seriously struggling engineer dealing with an unreliable business partner, and his tools were literally being impounded by the authorities. But his fiancée, Bertha Ringer, who would soon become Bertha Benz, came from a wealthy background. She possessed incredibly strong values, and she absolutely refused to just sit by and watch his genius go to waste.
And Bertha didn't just offer moral support either. She made a massive, direct financial intervention. She took her own dowry, her personal independent wealth, and used it to completely buy out Karl's failing business partner. By stepping in as the main capital provider, she put the two of them in full control of the operation. So really, this was the very first time Bertha saved the company, acting as the financial anchor that kept Karl's workshop afloat for a crucial decade. Because Bertha provided that essential financial runway, Karl was finally freed up to do what he did best: invent. Over the next several years, he was on fire. He developed the gasoline two-stroke engine in 1879, the spark plug, battery ignition, the planetary gear transmission, the water radiator, and even the clutch. These are literally the foundational technologies of the modern automobile, and the whole shebang culminated in the 1885 Benz patent motor wagon. But as you probably know, engineering brilliance doesn't automatically equal commercial success. When Karl debuted his three-wheeled 7-mile-per-hour machine to the public in 1886, the reaction was, well, disastrous. People literally called him the devil driving an infernal carriage. There was this intense public skepticism. People were terrified the machine would just explode right there in the streets. So the really crucial takeaway here is that by 1888, the motor wagon was a total commercial failure. It was seen as way too expensive, incredibly loud, and it couldn't even go short distances without mechanics hovering nearby just in case it broke down. Karl's investors and partners were absolutely furious. The business was on the brink of collapse all over again. Karl was brilliant, sure, but he just lacked that killer marketing instinct to show the world that his invention was actually practical. Which brings us right back to that summer morning in 1888. Bertha realized that if she didn't take matters into her own hands right then and there, her husband's entire life's work would go up in smoke. So she took that 66-mile journey. She navigated these dusty, stony roads that were originally only meant for horses. When she ran out of fuel, she didn't panic. She just stopped at a local pharmacy to buy Ligrin, a petroleum solvent, basically turning it into the world's first gas station. She even performed mid-journey mechanical repairs herself. She used her garter to insulate a wire and a hat pen to clean a blocked fuel pipe. And after 12 grueling hours, they actually made it. Section 1. The publicity boom. How an unauthorized road trip launched an industry. Practically overnight, the motor wagon was the talk of the town. People finally saw that, hey, automobiles actually are practical, and they can travel long distances. This massive surge in publicity gave Karl the momentum to design the cheaper Benz Velo, which hit an incredible production sum of 1,200 units. To put that into perspective, this was a massive milestone. It made the Velo the world's first large-scale production car and transformed Benz EC&C into the largest auto company in the world by the 1890s. But of course, the road to our modern $80 billion brand wasn't completely smooth. A fierce new rival had set up shop nearby, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach, and their approaches couldn't have been more different. Karl Benz was conservative. He was strictly engineering-focused, preferred slow, careful driving, and absolutely hated the idea of auto racing. Daimler, on the flip side, was highly competitive, super business-savvy, and firmly believed that speed and racing were the ultimate marketing tools. And honestly, Daimler's aggressive strategy really started to win out. In 1901, they introduced the Mercedes 35 HP. It was wider, set lower to the ground, and could hit a blistering 56 miles per hour. Fun fact, it was actually named after the daughter of a wealthy businessman and racing enthusiast, Emil Jelinek. This was the very first vehicle to really resemble our modern idea of a car, and it pulled Daimler far ahead of Benz commercially. To counter this slump, Karl's partners knew they had to build faster cars. Karl was so furious about racing on public roads that he actually left active duty at his own company in 1903. No way, right? But ironically, it was racing that saved the Benz brand for a third time. His partners pushed forward, and by 1908, a 120 horsepower Benz racer was dominating the track in Moscow. Then, in 1911, the famous Blitzen-Benz broke absolute speed records, literally beating planes and trains by hitting over 140 miles per hour. This massive surge in demand put Benz right back on top alongside Daimler. Section 2, Survival and Merger, a forced union in a ruined economy. Following World War I, Germany fell into a severe economic depression. To survive this, those two bitter rivals, Daimler and Benz, were actually forced to merge in 1926 to form Daimler-Benz, ensuring that the legacy Bertha started wouldn't be lost to financial ruin. However, as we move into the 1930s, the historical sources detail a much darker chapter. When Adolf Hitler rose to power, the Nazi regime heavily subsidized Daimler-Benz to dominate international motorsports. The political goal here was to use German engineering dominance, with cars reaching 200 miles per hour, as pure propaganda on the world stage. As the 1930s came to a close, the company was completely absorbed into the war effort. By 1942, they had halted all civilian public car production entirely. Their operations shifted 100% to the military. They were building 3 to 6.5-ton military trucks, manufacturing submarines and tanks, and producing aircraft engines for the front lines. To meet those massive and constantly escalating demands of the war, the company required a staggering amount of labor. By 1944, Daimler-Benz had an enormous workforce totaling 63,000 employees. But when we look at how that workforce was actually composed, it reveals a grim reality of this era. While 50% were regular workers and recruited women, the other 50% were forced laborers. These included prisoners of war, abducted civilians, and detainees from concentration camps. Our sources strictly note that these individuals were subjected to inhumane living conditions, constantly monitored by the SS, and tragically many perished from malnutrition and mistreatment during this period. Following the war, the company was stripped bare. Under the 1945 Potsdam Agreement, all of their foreign assets were confiscated and top management was denazified. But because they managed to retain ownership of their home plants, they were able to slowly pivot. In 1946, they obtained a permit from the US to repair military transports, and by 1947, they resumed passenger vehicle production, starting with just 1,045 units of their 170V models, alongside some ambulances and police vans. Section 3, a global comeback. Retaking the automotive stage. From those absolute ashes, the company leveraged their surviving plants to orchestrate a massive global recovery. By the 1950s, they had completely regained their influence in motorsports and global sales, profiting over $1 billion by 1954. And today, the company holds a modern valuation of roughly $80 billion. It's just a staggering figure, especially when you think back to that struggling engineer whose tools were impounded and the woman whose dowry kept his dream alive in the very beginning. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Look at this incredible journey, from bankruptcy to billions, navigating through world wars and total economic collapse. It leaves us with one powerful, lingering question. Where would the entire auto industry be today if Bertha Benz hadn't used her dowry to save the shop? Where would we be if she hadn't risked everything to push that three-wheeled machine out into the dusty, stony roads of 1888? Behind the famous hood ornament and the engineering legacy of Karl Benz, it was Bertha's unshakable belief in capital that ultimately saved the company and gave the world the automobile.
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this changes how you view the cars driving past you every single day.